Hello friends and welcome to Figure Study, where we're taking a look at Fans Hobby Lightning Eagle, which is a repaint and I guess remold, slight in some places, a little bit more, let's say, noticeable in others, of their Power Baser, which is Fans Hobby's version of Power Master Optimus Prime. I had my eye on the black version of Power Baser for a bit, but I just couldn't quite get into Power Baser itself. I don't really know why that is, because I have Double Evil, which if you've seen the top 10 figures of 2019 video, you'll know that. But I have Double Evil, and I think Double Evil is awesome, but I just could not get into Power Baser's look. There's just something about it that just did not do it for me. But I still was really interested in the mold, and then this comes along, and it's like, okay, there we go. It's a combination of the colors and also this thing right here, which we'll look at in a little bit more detail in a minute. But yeah, as I said, I was eyeballing Power Baser, but it didn't grab me enough to be willing to spend that kind of money on it. But this guy, yes. Because this is basically a big, chunky, expensive third-party version of Thunderclash. And I have no connection to Thunderclash whatsoever. Big surprise, I'm sure. But I love the ridiculousness of this color scheme and the different modes that this guy has. And also, I love how this handles certain things, which we'll talk about as we go through the video. But yes, Lightning Eagle is ridiculous looking, and that's why I'm so into this over, say, Power Baser. Because, I mean, look at it. You've got this, slightly dim off-white color with a very saturated red, two different blues. You got the darker, sort of pastel-looking blue, and then the lighter, almost sky blue, but then you've also got the turquoise, you've got this really wonderful pink for the windows, the gold, and then just these enormous missile-launching turbine things on top. It's so ridiculous and fantastic. And it actually pulls off the look of the original toy pretty darn well. I mean, granted, yes, there are definitely liberties taken here, but it totally works. Now, as just ignoring all the history of the toy and whatnot, it is a bit much in the way the color separation works. It's not so bad on the trailer. You've primarily got white, with a little bit of gold in the back, and red along the bottom, and that's fine. It's a little bit more clunky up here, and the cab, the white and pink and everything for the cab looks good, the red on the bottom looks good, but then you've got the two different blues up here that kind of break it up a little bit in a weird way and kind of makes it almost look like this is not part of the cab, even though it is, and that's where the smokestacks come off of. So, looking at it just in terms of color placement and stuff, it's just a little bit... There are certain things that I think would have benefited from being handled a little bit differently, but it's fine. It's really fine. I do think maybe if these panels here were the same color as this, this white color, it would help to kind of visually make it look more like the cab's going back this way, but minor nitpicks. Now, I want you all to contain your excitement. You might actually want to sit down before I say what I'm about to say. I'm going to be looking at the accessories this time. I know, but this figure in particular, the accessories are kind of a must. These things are really ridiculous, and I love them. And each one is exactly the same. They're not mirrored. You can see they both have the screw holes on the same side. So you basically just get two of this, which is fine. And so we will only be looking at one because they are exactly the same. But it's just this giant gold turbine rocket booster thing, and I love how ridiculous this is. It's got some nice detailing in there, and the color separation is nice. I like that it's primarily this big chunk of gold, but then you just get a little bit of silver and this stripe of black with the kind of off-white grayish cap on the end. It is also a functioning missile launcher. You've got this button back here, which is the safety. When you see that red, that means the safety's off. I also think it's great how ridiculous it is that there's a safety on this mechanism, but with this button pushed in and the safety on, pushing down the launching button does not do anything. So turning off the safety, pushing this in, totally fires a giant gold missile bullet thing, which is also completely ridiculous. And they totally did not need to build that functionality into this, but it's cool that they did. It's kind of like how Double Evil has the functioning spring-loaded Power Master gimmick. Yes, these are cool. And ridiculous. And then there's also the gun, which just slips into this little bit, slips into the slot here. And for placing these little tab sections here just kind of rest over this lip here. It's not like the best connection. I mean, it holds. It's not going to fall off or anything. Like, I can do this and it's fine. But there's just something to note if you ever get this guy. Make sure you remove these before you start any kind of transformation, because they will fall off if you start, turning things around. Anyway, this is the gun, which also looks pretty darn good. Now just flip that in and flip this out, and that becomes the functional rifle. And again, I like how it's this big block of gold with just little bits of black detailing colored in. And the molding's also nice too. And now for the vehicle proper. Before I separate things out, I do want to say it's a little disappointing how this is set up. I'm going to see if I can angle it so you can see what I'm talking about here. This bit here is the hitch part that connects to these two tabs on the back of the cab. And that's great. It actually holds pretty well. Like, you're not going to pick it up by this, but it works, and you can roll it and everything, and that's fine. The thing that bums me out is, if you look at it, I'm going to try to angle this. This is the placement of everything when you've got this hooked up. And you can see that the feet of the smaller robot mode will hit against the head of the bigger robot mode. And unfortunately, that's like the best clearance option that there is, because you can disconnect this. It pegs in down here, so you can disconnect it and kind of move it back, which is actually probably preferable. I hadn't thought about that until right now, but moving it back, you can see there's a lot more space there, so you can turn it without a problem. But if you have it pegged in as it's supposed to be, which is the pegs under here peg into these slots on the arms there, like, that keeps that panel in place, keeps it from flopping around, but it puts the head too close to the hitch. Spinning the head around like this is probably preferable, so it's not as obvious when you're looking at it from certain angles, but when you connect it up like that, those earpieces are right up against the toes, so that does not work. Just something to keep in mind. If you get this, you're going to want to look out for the head there. Anyway, let's get the trailer out of the way and take a little bit more of a look at the cab proper. And this is interesting. I kind of like how it's got this flat but kind of sloped out skirt on the front, which is a little bit different from the Power Baser version. And that one also has the spot for the Power Master to plug in. But more than anything, I love the pink for the lights in the windshield here. Not super into the Matrix looking thing behind the windshield, but I just love the colors. The color combination here is fantastic. And this little wind scoop thing is it's my favorite part of this figure for a couple of reasons in robot mode, but I also like how it kind of changes the shape of the cab. It just pops right off, and there you've got the more typical shape for the Power Baser cab, minus the molding differences and stuff. But I don't know, I much prefer how this looks with this clipped on top. It just adds a little bit more shape to it, so it's not just like a box on wheels. Now, to do the size comparisons, you bring the trailer back in here. Gonna have to do it this way because it's just a large fellow, but to compare this thing to a few other figures, here is with a standard deluxe, and it's big. I don't think Fans Hobby does small or subtle. At least they haven't released anything that's small or subtle yet. There might be a couple of things in the works that are. And there he is, giving a piggyback ride to the duck tank. Alright, time to get to the transformation, and there's a fair bit to cover because this thing technically has like 4 different modes, but we'll get there. So I think first, I'm going to start with the trailer. Okay, I'm doing this with an extremely attention-hungry cat getting in the way. You might have seen her briefly in the sped-up transformation. She's still on my lap. You might even be able to hear her purring, I don't know. But anyway, the reason I wanted to do the trailer first is because I wanted to show off that yes, you can do the regular base mode for Power Baser. There are some differences. Primarily, in Power Baser, you're supposed to rotate the arms out and up so that they make columns and you can like plug guns in on the top. These and this do not plug in to the ports here like the other guns with Power Baser would. So instead, what you end up having to do is combining these. So you want to flip this little bit in here. So you only have one of these little clips facing out. Astrid, she keeps drawing the tripod. And do the same on this side. And then these just slot together like this, which can be a little tricky, but it can be done. And then the gun, you can actually fold that in, fold this out, and this can sit between these. But before we do that, are you seriously biting my arm? I'm gonna flip out these little bits here, and these will slide over. These will slide over these little raised bits on the forearm pieces here. So you can just slide that into place, and it will hold. It's not, again, not the most secure. Like, you wouldn't want to transform this thing with it like that, because if you tilt it up, it's gonna fall over or fall off, but it's doable. Astrid, please. And this just pops out in there. Get your claws out of my knee. Thank you. Okay, now that I've got holes in my leg, just nudge this back. And here you can get a feel for the more traditional looking base mode. So yeah, if any of you were curious. Anyway, let's move on to the proper or more official transformation for this battle platform thing. Okay, and there we have Lightning Eagle or Thunderclash in his first robot mode. And this I love. I love the colors, I love the sculpting, I love the personality that comes with this. It's great. And also, I of course love this bit here. As I said, this kind of makes the set for me, because without it, you've got a much more standard body for Power Baser. And it's fine, but this bit in the middle here just looks so broken up. I'm not super into it. Now, I will say, one thing I was concerned about was this grill, because, you know, it sticks out and flips up there and could be a problem. I did not realize, I don't know if it's been mentioned in other videos or not, but I did not realize that this actually cannot flip back up when this guy is transformed into a robot, because this hinge here, when it's crunched back down, which incidentally gives him an ab crunch, when it's crunched back down, actually stops this panel from going all the way back. Like, it can go back a bit, but then it stops there. It cannot go all the way back up. So that's great. I did not realize that, and I really like the fact that I don't have to worry about this thing going back up into the chest when he's a robot. So that is great. However, this still looks pretty broken up. And that's where this comes in, because when you plug it in, it covers that up. Yeah, when this is in place, it covers up that mess, and I like this so much. It makes the robot mode look a lot more, I don't want to say complete, because it looked complete before, but just cleaner. I think cleaner works. Like, you've got a little hint of that stuff going on down there, but it's really not bad, not that noticeable. And it doesn't get in the way of the ab crunch, because that's all happening down here anyway. I really like this standalone robot mode, which is awesome because this is kind of like how he's meant to be, because he is an homage of the G1 toy, which was the robot with a big battle platform made out of the trailer. But as much as I was into this thing just on those merits that I was talking about, like the colors, the cleaner looking small robot mode, the chest thing there, what really completely sold me on this guy is the fact that Fans Hobby managed to homage both the original toy and the IDW comic in one figure. So I'm going to pop up a side-by-side real quick so you can see. But this is what the G1 toy of Thunderclash looked like. And you can see that there are a lot of similar notes here. The placement of the colors overall, some of the details down here, and it's surprisingly, I don't want to say accurate because clearly, it's very different, but it's surprisingly on point as an homage. And I also like that, yes, the emblem on the chest is a little bit different, but it still evokes that original toy. There are certain elements to it that do come from that. But what's really cool is that this design right here is actually a mishmash of the G1 toy emblem and the IDW comic emblem. So looking at those two designs next to this, you can see that it's essentially a hybrid of the two. And that's really clever because the giant combined robot form is 100% derived from the IDW version. And we'll see that when we do the combined thing. But it's so cool! I love the fact that this one toy covers two completely different versions of the character, or figure, or whatever you want to call it. And bringing in this monstrosity. Oh boy. Move him off to the side real quick. This is the battle platform, and I'm not super into this. This is why I kind of liked being able to get the more power baser looking base going, because it just looks like a half transformed robot. I'm just not super into the look here. Like, it's primarily what's going on down here. I'm just not as into that. I totally get that the original toy had like this raised platform thing, but it was a tripod, not a bipod, and like the color distribution was different. And there's the fact that if we really wanted to be slavish to the G1 toy, these should actually be down here, but they can't really mount down here, which is a shame. I feel like there has to have been a way for them to come up with some way to do that. Maybe even just have these be able to mount down here and the gun could mount up here somehow to just kind of better homage the original toy, but they worked with what they had. I can imagine they didn't want to retool a ton on this figure, but it's a little bit more than anything. Like, yeah, this should be down here if you want it to be accurate, but more than anything, it's just the obvious robot legs down here. That is the irritating thing for me. I did find there's a simple way to fan mode it, where basically you just flip up the little hip skirts and spin it back around this way. And if you do it this way, you can also fold these panels up to create sort of like foot shields in a way, like something to block his feet as he's standing on the platform, the smaller robot feet. This to me looks a little bit less like a robot that's half transformed. I mean, it's clearly, you've got the legs down here, clearly, but it's less obvious when you compare it to the fully combined mode. I know the reason they want to have it facing this way is because you get these panels coming back, which he can stand on, and it works a little bit better because if you have it flipped the other way, then you've got to get his legs over here, and that requires making him like do kind of like an awkward kind of squat pose. But as I said, it's an option. But to get this all sorted out, this is going to be tricky. There are these little handles here that can flip out of the larger robot mode shoulders. I don't think there's any way for these to actually slide into the hands. It doesn't seem to have the rail system that the gun, that the other weapons have, but still, you can slide his fists over the handles. As you can see, this is a little bit awkward, and after some futzing, you end up with this thing, which is completely ridiculous, but I do love the ridiculousness of it. It definitely misses some beats, but it gets the point across. Let's, oh boy, move him over here. This is going to be interesting. Here he is, with the standard deluxe, and I'll do the regular robot comparisons in a second. But yeah, standard deluxe, he's huge, and yeah, here he is, completely towering over the duck tank. Okay, let me get this guy off of his battle platform. And I will say one thing that's kind of unfortunate with this set is that battle platform is not super duper stable if it doesn't have a robot balancing on it. Just something to be aware of. You're going to want to kind of counterbalance it by moving the legs back a little bit, like ratcheting those hips. Anyway, here is the default robot with a standard deluxe, and here he is with the duck tank. I'm really hoping this doesn't end up taking forever, because there's just so many modes that this guy does. Anyway, I am going to turn this thing into the combined robot mode, and that will be a treat. So, let's do that. Okay, you all probably realized after a bit of that, it was a bit of an ordeal. That's kind of another reason why I wasn't super keen on Power Baser at first, because getting that cab section transformed so that it can fit into the larger robot mode is, oh boy. There were a couple of times I basically had to start over again with those legs. It was not particularly fun, and it still doesn't quite sit right inside the torso there. Like, I've pushed the wheels up, but it still doesn't, like, they're still getting in the way. I don't know what I could possibly be doing wrong, because they sit kind of in the little grooves where they're supposed to sit on the insides of those back panels, but it's just, it's annoying. That being said, as I mentioned before, I absolutely appreciate the fact that this toy does this, because this is definitely meant to evoke more of an IDW Thunderclash design. Pulling up the one image I can find that shows off Thunderclash. I don't know why it's so hard to find a proper image of everything, but pulling up the one image, you can see that he definitely shares some notes with that design. Primarily, like the shoulders, definitely more of an IDW design. The shins and knee pads with the spikes, definitely more of an IDW design. And I just think that's really cool. As I said, I love that if you want to have a slightly more IDW look to him, you've got this mode. If you want to have a more toy, like original toy look to him, you've got the smaller mode. And that is super cool. Now, doing this with the cat on my lap again, bringing him over here. Gonna put a gun in his hand. And this does the Make Toy style thing where you've got the kind of rail there that slides into a groove in the palm. So that gun's not going anywhere. And that's great. I love that design. I wish more toys did it. And if you want, these things totally have a flip-out handle. There is a flip-out handle, has the same kind of rail system. So if you wanted to, you could absolutely do the same thing, have him wielding the big engines as very large guns. So that is totally a thing you can do. It also occurs to me, I forgot to show off the accessories with the little guy, because I just plugged them onto the battle platform mode. So let me pop up a couple pictures real quick. Here you can see the smaller robot wielding the rifle, and here he is wielding the giant turbine bazooka things. Now with the turbine bazooka things, the small robot can't hold them completely. Basically, his hand cannot close around the grips because they're a little bit too wide, but he can still hold them. Now in terms of these things, I actually prefer the default storage solution for them, as is shown in the instructions in the box art and whatnot. When you've got these bits both folded down, they just slip over this lip here, and this little bit here will kind of sit in this little recess there. And that gives him like a giant rocket boosters type look, which I think is great. And there is the fully combined Lightning Eagle with his enormous pods over his back, and that looks really cool. I'm still more into the smaller individual robot look over this, but I do appreciate this. This is neat. And as I said, I think it's really cool how this is like this combination of IDW and original toy design. And just for the curious, if you wanted to do him without this bit on there, that's what he looks like, and I'm less of a fan of that. Let's take a look at that head, and that is a pretty cool head. Again, I love the colors. It's that pastel-y blue with the gold. That looks really nice. The red for the accents, and I think his eyes are actually more of a hot pink color, which totally works. I also like the design of the head. It's got this kind of boxy swoosh going along the sides. And just taking an overall look at this guy, again, I love the color breakup here. I like that they added some additional detail on the insides of the thighs that you don't, or shin, calves, whatever. The insides of the legs that they didn't have to paint, but they totally did, and that's cool. I like that he's got the big gold feet. It's just fun. Not sure how accurate, but still think it's fun. And again, these bits here in the legs, definitely more evocative of the IDW design. And again, in the shoulders, where he's got those gold boxes and stuff. It's a very cool figure. I'm just not a fan of how fiddly and not quite right getting him combined is, because it's, yeah, this thing, it's sitting right. Like you can see, these panels are not popping up, which is great, but like these bits back here, if we turn them around, you can see they're actually kind of bowed out slightly because they're just pushing up against these, and I can't figure out what's wrong with that because the wheels seem to be sitting in there like they're supposed to be. The smokestacks have gone into these little grooves. I don't know. It is what it is, and as I said, I probably will not be displaying him, or definitely will not be displaying him predominantly in this mode. I think this mode looks cool, it's just not my preferred mode. Anyway, here he is with a standard deluxe. He's huge. He is huge. And here he is, again, absolutely huge next to the duck tank. And that is going to do it for Lightning Eagle. Very cool figure. I just wish that the combination was a little bit less of a pain to get to. It's just getting that cab situated just right is... not a fan. Not a fan of that. But once it's in there, it does look cool. Though I am still 100% of the opinion that the smaller robot mode is the better looking of the two. Also, I'm not too keen on how these wheels here stick out. That's not super awesome looking. And that's with them pushed back. I did not forget to push them back. That's with them pushed back. They still stick out a bit. But what do you all think of Fans Hobby's Lightning Eagle, which is based on their Power Baser? As I've said many times, I love the colors here. I love how ridiculous they are. I love that hot pink that's in there. I kind of wish that there's a bit more of it in there, but it is what it is. In terms of unofficial Thunderclash representation, which is your favorite? Because I know Mastermind Creations did a remold of their Tarn to make into Thunderclash, and that one looks pretty spot on for the comic book. Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And remember, art is more than meets the eye.